The chief Delphi thread titled A Comment About Alliance Selection in Off-Season Events, available at http://bit.ly/1t3atww.
I was looking at the Alliance selections in the Fall Classic in LA and found it disturbing that so many teams chose their second robot as an Alliance member. Even though there were only 18 teams total, many were left out of the 16 robots that were in the semifinals. The emphasis on fall competitions should be inclusiveness and encouraging new participants. Draft choices that narrow the alliances to just a few teams seems to run counter to that experience. I hope the teams left out at that tournament weren't too disappointed.
So 1678 is going to come down next year to help expand the field, right? If you look at Saturday's selections, only 4 B robots were picked for eliminations, with only one pair on the same alliance, and that as the 4th robot. This may be because there was a much larger field to choose from. While you're at it, why not comment about allowing teams to compete in both one-day tournaments including eliminations, instead of forcing them to choose one day? Because, as you might notice, about half of the teams in Sunday's elims had competed in Saturday's eliminations as well. After all, this is about inclusiveness and encouraging new participants. And I can't think of anything less encouraging than to get walloped by the same team 2 days in a row, or watching said team walk off with multiple days of awards even if they're not all the same. Or how about barring the B robots altogether, resulting in a much smaller event, because you want to include everybody and encourage all the new participants? I generally consider the off-season events to be emphasizing fun and training. As part of those, multiple teams like to swap out drive teams, or do other similar things. And truth to tell, it's rather entertaining to watch Twin A knock Twin B out of an event if they're on opposite sides. Plus it gets the entire team cheering for an entire match. For those that can't catch on very well, that second paragraph is intended to be somewhere between sarcasm and satire. I'm not seriously proposing either solution. The first paragraph is serious, or nearly so. The event could have used 1678's HP coach as a ref. Easily 60% of the fouls came from humans not knowing what was going on. 1 or 2 incidents stand out, but I think I'll save the teams and team members involved the embarrassment.
By people, do you mean individual human beings? Or teams?
Eliminating picking from within the top 8 forces the captains to pick robots deeper into the field than would probably normally go. Also, it keeps the eliminations matches closer because you don't have all the top teams spread between 2 or 3 really good teams and 5 or 6 okay to mediocre teams. Teams would get involved that might have otherwise been left out of eliminations, because captains were allowed to pick from each other. That's how more teams would get involved. And it's the off-season. I know you want to go out and compete, but the off-season is about having fun without the pressure of the normal completion season.
Anyone who thinks a half-day of qualification matches, often involving trainee drivers, produces anything close to an accurate top 8 is kidding themselves. I've been to quite a few off-seasons where picking is forbidden in the top 8. And I've encountered more than a few teams that cheered when they found themselves at the number 9 or number 10 seat at the end of qualifications, rather than as an alliance captain. The system becomes ridiculous.
I am sorry, I am still not following the logic. Let's say there is 32 teams in the field, and if you have 8 alliances in the LMs, each captain gets to choose their best match, in terms of gameplay, for their alliance, as they choose 3 more teams to round out their alliance. Then even if Captain 1 chooses Team 2, then through cascade, the 9th place team is now the number 8 captain. And so on through the picks. All 32 teams will still end up in the LMs. I understand that this is the most perfect situation, and most off-season events do not run this way. Now, as a coach trying to bring up my next year's drive team, I would hate to handicap them in picking the best robot regardless of where they are in the standings. I want my drive team to play with the teams that can allow our robot to play the game the way we decided way back on kickoff in January. This allows my drive team to create the best alliance to face off against other strong alliances. Even if my team was not picked, it is a learning opportunity. The idea of evening out the field confounds me and goes against how I want to develop my team. Even though it is an off-season event, I want my team to treat it as an in-season competition. Otherwise, why even have LMs? Just declare a winner after the quals.
If the top 8 were reliably the strongest 8 robots at competition, then eliminating picking among them for the sake of better competitive balance might be a good idea. Unfortunately, given the extreme variance in rankings at FRC events, especially off-seasons, this is not the case, and all you do is make things worse. As for the OP, I'm not sure what I think about teams picking their own D robots for elimination. On the one hand, yes, it does reduce the number of teams that get to participate in LMs. On the other, is that really a compelling reason not to do it? Especially when the alternative quite likely reduces the standard of play in eliminations, which is less fun for everyone. I think this is a question of values, and probably has different answers for different events with different atmospheres.
Okay, if there were only 32 teams, and each captain then selected 3 other robots to be on their alliance, then yes, everybody is already participating and therefore not adding any new teams to the mix. But if you have an event with more than 32 teams, like Countdown Throwdown this year, then that is when it opens the field to more teams. With regards to gameplay, the advantage here is that with the best teams spread evenly thought out, the alliance captains, then the matches, especially the 1v8 and the 2v7 matches, will be a lot more competitive. That allows for better training in handling real competition-like situations where your team has to make the right decisions or gameplay strategy in order to win the match. Not just get overwhelmed by an alliance with far superior robots and saying, "Oh well, we tried, now let's go home."
Assume 8 alliances are in the elimination rounds, and each alliance selects its own backup robot. If there were 33 teams instead of 32 teams, how many would play in LMs under a serpentine system, and how many teams would play in LMs under the Countdown Throwdown system? Whenever there are more teams than LM spots, someone will always have to sit out. The Countdown Throwdown system does not open up the field to any more teams than an event which uses a serpentine draft does.
No, it doesn't. Math doesn't lie. It leaves that to abuse of statistics. 8 4 equals 32. Regardless of how many teams are at the event, if 8 alliance captains pick 3 more teams per alliance, there are still only 32 teams in eliminations. End of story. What disallowing into top 8 selection does is it creates some incentive to throw a match. If I'm on the bubble, say in number 7, and I want to be picked by the top team, I'm not going to want to win my last match in such an event. What this sort of rule does is it creates a scorched earth right from the get-go, but it's the sort of scorched earth where if you can play the metagame right, you can win huge. See Curie 2010, match 100, only potentially more devastating, to more than one team. Oh, and it jumbles up exactly which teams are on which alliances in eliminations. Possibly. Depends on scouting and final drafting order. As for the rest, let's just say that you've made a lot of assumptions, very few of which are actually the case. Starting with the assumption that the top 8 are always actually the top 8 robots, I'm going to guess that you haven't heard of a couple of cases where a robot that hadn't passed inspection made it into the top 8 via ranking. There's a reason behind the whole if you play a match with an uninspected robot, your entire alliance gets a red card rule. And then assuming that the 1/8 and 2/7 matches are always a blowout in favor of the top alliance, I've seen a number 8 alliance take a world championship. As far as real competition-like situations, I show you qual matches and LM matches in the season events, and note that the no top 8 picking or some variant was in play for precisely 1 season or less before it was officially scrapped due to teams playing to lose and manipulate the rankings. Incidentally, I like A no top 8 rule would have had little to no effect at Fall Classic on Sunday. A no alliance captain would have had even less effect. There were only 4 alliances, and as I recall most of the second robots were down a bit more than 4 or 8 or whatever, though not that far down.
In my opinion, and it may be an unpopular one, while an off-season event is more fun and laid back than a traditional regional, it is still a competition that we pay for. There is still a tournament structure with awards, and teams who are crowned champion winner. If an event wants to run a no second bots or no second bots in eliminations, or, even worse, no second bots till all real bots are picked, let the teams decide if they want to pay to go to said event. I really dislike this thread as at Panther Prowl after all alliances were picked we did have 5 teams who were left out because second bots made it to eliminations. 1649, 2152, 2916, 3502, and 4592. None of these teams seem to have an issue with not being picked for eliminations because of second bots, at least from who I have talked to. Heck, 2152's second robot was actually picked and they weren't. What it comes down to is plain and simple. To paraphrase a man much smarter than me, the F in first does not stand for fair. We are playing a sport just like any other, and sometimes the pendulum swings the other way. Do I wish there was a way for every team to compete at every level while still maintaining equality of competition? Yes. Is that feasible? No.
Okay, looking back over this thread, I feel like kind of an idiot. I don't know what I was thinking. It's true there will only be 32 teams, and that no matter what system you use there will still be 32 teams. However, I still feel that a system, just for the off-season, where the alliance captains can't pick from each other creates better competition in the LM rounds. In any kind of event there will be the people that get to a top 8 ranked team, that probably shouldn't have been there. But that is still part of the game, adapting to who can be on your alliance, and how you use those robots. And yes, number 8 teams can go out and win championships, but they still had to go out and earn that by playing and using what teams they had available to them. By using this system, lower ranked teams have the opportunity to play with higher ranked teams, which allows them to get experience and perhaps grow as a team from the experience. Maybe make a friend that normally wouldn't have. There will always be pros and cons to any system. I happen to like the CTTD system for off-season. Doesn't mean everyone else shares my same opinion.
I'm sorry that you have to get so angry about a comment based on the information available on Blue Alliance. There is no indication in the Sunday information that the field was somehow of limited size. And Saturday's info shows only the elimination alliances. A more measured comment explaining the situation rather than lashing out is much more appropriate on a web forum. Please consider your language and tone when you enter a discussion here. It sounds like your anger is better aimed at the event organizers, but rationally and calmly discussing the options with them about how to make it a better event.
I was responding to the fact that without having ever been to the event, or apparently viewing the publicly available team list, follow the event link from that bar page, and it's one more link to the spreadsheet. You had the appearance of criticizing the teams at the event for making choices that they chose to make. I believe a close analogy would be the scorched earth debate, particularly if triggered by someone from far away. Say it happened at a Sacramento off-season and I, never having been to such an event, complained from down here. So, I responded from the standpoint of someone who was at the event, both days, working with the organizers to keep the event going. Trust me, it was a lot harder and a lot more frustrating than it should probably have been. Reference the thread on the event for some of the issues we had at various times. Also, I did note, in the spoiler, that I was not being entirely serious in the second paragraph. Some of it was intended as a where does this sort of questioning stop, by showing the logical continuation of your stated reason for off-seasons. For the record, the goal of the Fall Classic differs somewhat from your reasoning. For convenience, the mission of the Fall Classic is to expand the awareness of FIRST robotics competition to students. teachers, sponsors and mentors from all across Southern California, as well as to provide existing teams an opportunity to compete with their robotic creations once again. I guess some folks can't tell the difference between someone being angry and someone being sarcastic, even when the sarcasm tags are in use. It was a little bit of both, to be fair, and I did significant rewriting to tone it down from the original post. On the topic of discussing with the event organizers, if you have a problem, real or perceived, with how an event is run, or something that happens with an event, shouldn't you contact the organizers prior to posting on CD, as much as possible?